Hello and welcome to a CBK gaming video. Join us as we discuss and review Darklight Memento Mori by Dark Ice Games. So, what is Darklight Memento Mori? It's a 1 to 4 player cooperative dungeon crawling game where you take on the role of a character who has woken in this dark world. You have an item, an heirloom that links to you somehow, gives you some different ability or increases a statistic. You have a set number of skills, you have items, but it's all very limited. You have very limited resources and you have to progress through dungeons and through exploring the world around you, finding towns, villages and hamlets to identify items or to learn new skills, get new tattoos, and buy new items. Everything is dictated by a dice roll. To hit a monster, you have a number, whether it's 4+ or 3+ to hit a creature. To do damage, it's usually a d6 plus a figure. If there is a skill test, you will roll the number of dice related to that skill. So say, for example, you're doing an agility test, you would roll 4 dice. If you had 4 in your agility stat, you would be told whether you need 1 or 2 successes. And that means that you need 1 or 2 6s on a 6-sided die. At its heart, it's reminiscent of playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was a lot younger, and not at the new 5th edition, more around the 2nd edition or even 1st edition. It maintains that difficulty curve. The first dungeon is going to be dangerous. You have very limited items. You do find some as you go along, so the creatures, you get a card telling you what the creatures that you come up against have. They may drop some items that can be useful. You can be lucky, so it is very lucky. There are hundreds of items that you can find. There are epic items, so these are items which are far more powerful, but they're a lot rarer to find. But it's also by chance. There's the ability to find items in rooms, so there are different rooms that you can come across. When you open the chest, there is a set of tokens, and on each of these tokens it will tell you whether it's a possessed chest, so a mimic where you would have to fight one of these amazing creatures, or whether it was an epic piece of loot, whether it was loot, whether it's trapped, whether it's locked. So do you have the lockpicks to then be able to open it? It is a good dungeon crawler. There are a lot of dungeon crawlers out there. This one, its uniqueness is it's bigger than many of them. It's a big box. You need a lot of space on a table. This is just, I think this is the 2nd or 3rd dungeon that we've done. And as you can see, it fits across the entire table. The miniatures are on a larger scale and are very well detailed. You have
wonderfully detailed, yeah.
Yeah, and I like them. They are different. You're not just fighting your standard goblins, orcs, gnolls, kobolds. These are demonic, different, odd, slightly twisted take. It reminds me very much of Perdition's Mouth, another game in that dark, sort of grim world. So what did you think of Darklight. How did you enjoy it or not?
This is one that grew on me. The first time we played it, we did the first dungeon. I thought, it's like all other dungeon crawlers. I've really enjoyed it, and it is different enough that you're not thinking another one. But it is just a dungeon crawler. But when we got to the end of it, and then it was, now we've got to journey to the next town, and that takes on a whole nother journey and another adventure and the things that happen to us. And it suddenly turns into more than just a dungeon crawler. You come out of the dungeon exhausted because you have really had to battle your way through, which has been fantastic. But at the end of it, you come out going, now we've got to get to the next town, and do we stop and help the farmer take in his crops and possibly get some money to pay for bandages when we get to the town, or are we too tired and just carry on? But is that going to have an effect because we haven't helped the locals? And it just becomes, you actually see the world that these dungeons are in. You don't just see the dungeons. And that for me took it to another level.
Yeah, so how they have differed in this is there are journey cards. So there are hundreds of cards, different permutations of the cards, but there are cards which, if you're going to be travelling to, let's say, a town that you have found, I think on normal circumstances that will take you 8 days. If you've already found it, it reduces that time, so you know where you're going. But if you're looking at it, looking for a town, first of all, you would take 8 of those cards. There may be something that adjusts that by a D3, so you may have to take more, you may take less. Each day you will turn a card. You will roll dice to see if you have been, whether events occur. We're trying not to spoil too much of the story. So there are some dice rolls every day. There's this roundel that tracks what's happening with that. You turn over a journey card and you're left with options. As you say, it might be to help a farmer. It might be to, it can be something quite positive. It can be something quite bad. There can be a landslide that's going to delay you another 3 days, or you can try and clear it, but that will make you fatigued, which means you've got to go and rest when you get to a village or a town or a hamlet. So all in all, it tells that story very well. It is a role-playing game in a box, as we have described folklore. This is different to folklore's about the world. This is very much about the dungeons, but the story that goes around that.
You understand why you're going into each dungeon. There's a story behind it. It's not just, here's the next scenario, go do it. You know why you're in there. You know what you're looking for. You know the answers that you're seeking. Yes.
There's also some fantastic artwork that goes with it. There is also so this is a 1 to 4 player, but you can have a 5th player who can be your storyteller or your GM. And it's got extra rules in the game that allows you to change the world up, amend things. It's also got a lot of, I was surprised at the amount of blank cards that you've got. So you can write your own story, put your own items into the game, which allows you to customize the game fantastically. And I really appreciate that. Now we've added a few things, so there are some extra packs. We haven't got the bosses. There's a number of figures that we haven't bought. We will be looking at those. Yeah. And we haven't painted any of these. We really do need to get round to that. We've just got so many figures to paint. There's various cards with different reference charts, information, so everything is easily at hand. The rule book is okay, could be better, but then I think that about most rule books in honesty. Where this really shines, there's a couple of things. One is it's a different style of world. I like the fact that on the character cards, which I'll show you on screen now, you have the female and the male on the reverse. They're exactly the same. It's just a different choice of art, and it allows you to to play that role that you want to play. Unfortunately, the miniatures don't come in male or female, and that would have been, I think, perhaps something they would have looked to do in the Kickstarter. But then you can try and find some models that represent that, and I like that. I like that they've done that. Could have gone a little bit further. The cards are well done. That I like the size of them. You can visualise the dungeon very well. It looks good on the table, but as I say, it takes a lot of space.
It does.
What are your pros for this game? Why should somebody that already has a dungeon crawling game in their collection, why should they add this one?
As I said before, because of the story behind it. I think they've taken a lot of time to develop the world and everyone that's in it and all the characters they've thought about, and then they've placed them into the dungeons. They haven't created the dungeon and then done the backstory. You've got the backstory, and now we know why we're going into the dungeons. And I think that's done very well. And I've enjoyed the way the combat's done as well, because that runs on initiative as well. It's not we all go, the monsters go. It depends on who you're fighting as to what their initiative is compared to your initiative. And so it's very, very role-playing style, sort of Dungeons and Dragons, and yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think the reason that you want this in your collection, it's got some lovely miniatures, and I know a lot of people buy games for the miniatures to use in D&D, etc., etc. It's got a fantastic feel of that old 80s, 70s style role-playing game. It's got that feel, but it's added that grimness to it. It's got the ability to customize the game to how you want to play it, and has the ability to add a GM, and I think that makes a big difference. You're buying not just a board game, you're investing in the ability to role play in a new world, in a new way. Now, it's not going to be as in depth as, say, Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. However, that means there's a lot open to your interpretation. There's a lot, if you've got a GM that wants to world build and make something new, fill your boots. There's so much here.
And when you get to a town or a village, sort of the options that are available is, and also when you do come to a town or village, you have to draw out tokens to see what services are available in that town. So you don't get everything, which is lovely, because even though you might have a craft that you really desperately want to use, if it's not in that town, it's not in that town. You've got to carry on to the next one to find it. And I like that, because that's more realistic. That's how the world is. Your local shops aren't every single shop that you need, and they aren't in this world either.
Yes, so you can, I would say actually that's something which really does drive you to explore. You want, so this game offers you, there's a booklet that shows all the different settlement locations, everything you can get there. The negatives are going there as well. So, and the positives. So, for example, if you go to the apothecary, you can buy bandages. There's a roll that you make that will say they've got a surplus of bandages, they've had some weather damage, so they will sell them to you considerably cheaper. There are some where you might find out that everything you've just bought is fake. It's all a copy. Or you might have a street urchin steal some money from you. There's countless options and story in that one little book. One of the things that we looked at, our characters wanted to get tattoos. We need to find a tattooist. Those tattoos can add some really good benefits to your character, but you have to go and find it. We were lucky, we picked it out on one of the villages. But also the villages, the marketplace doesn't always have what you want. It's very dependent on a good charisma score. You roll some dice, and depending on that result depends on what's available in the location that you visited. So that's all really good. So it's really good fun. It's very well written. What about the cons? What do you see that would turn people away from this game?
I don't know about turning people away from it, but my biggest pain with this, which isn't a big one, but the doors. They look amazing. They really do look and feel part of the dungeon. But if you're sat at the wrong bit of the table, you can't see what's happening on the other side because of the scale of them. And the number of times we have had to just go, we know this door's locked, but we're going to move the door out of the way so that we can then see where the characters are and what they're doing in that room. And then at the end of sort of that fight or that movement, and we're at the next doorway, put that door back up again to keep the thematic side of it. And I don't know a way around it other than using smaller doors, but then
You can't.
the smaller doors wouldn't match what it is. So it was just something that sort of got to me a little bit, but not much.
So I think there's a couple of cons that are. It's just in the type of game. It's big. You need a lot of space. That's a given con. There are a lot of cards. There's a lot of tokens, endless tokens, because you need to represent wounds, poison, stamina, bandages, lockpicks, holy water, fire water, all of these different things.
And that's before you then get into the magic with the manta and
mana, and so there is a lot to it. That can be quite daunting. I would say this is a very good dungeon crawler to pick up. Something like this or Descent, quite good to pick up and learn and use as almost your first dungeon crawl. There is a lot of random element to this, so it's a lot of dice throwing. I don't have a problem with that. Come from a role-playing background, that's not a problem. I like the card-driven ones just as much as I like the dice-driven ones. The rule book could be better. I think that it can be a little bit confusing, but we've always found the cards are much easier just to follow. And it doesn't seem to always be structured well. You can't always find what you're looking for in the rule book. But other than that, I mean, I really like the dashboard that you have as a character. It's, again, brings me back to playing role-playing games on Sega Mega Drive. I remember the D&D game, or playing, as we did, first edition Dungeons and Dragons with Ken and Guy. It just, for me, there's a bit of nostalgia in playing this game. I really hope that they're going to continue it a little bit more. I think that I saw some chat about something happening with Darklight. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. But I think this is a really good, fun game. It belongs in your collection if you like dungeon crawlers, if you like cooperative games, if you're looking for something where you want to move from role-playing to a board game and have some of that role-playing in your game. There's this, and Folklore are fantastic for that.
Or the other way, if you've got friends that you want to introduce to role-playing, but they've only done board games and they're a bit unsure about it.
These are good to do.
This is a good one to take that step into role-playing.
Yeah, the cards are good. The print is well done. Yeah. Card stock is good. I do think that unlike Folklore, which has got quite thin card, these are a much stronger card stock. They have to be, because they're being linked to the plastic door holders.
Which is also quite good, because as the dungeon grows and occasionally you need to move it around because you've run out of table space and slide it along.
It's easy to move.
Yeah, you're not moving one tile and slotting everything else in. It's all linked together, so you can just move the whole lot together.
But overall, fantastic game. That if I was going to be giving it a score out of 10, this to me is very much that 8 out of 10, that 80% mark. It ticks a lot of boxes, but nostalgia probably brings that up a little bit. What about yourself, if you're thinking? Karen?
The first time we played it, I was thinking a 7. I was going to say it's a 70% for me. But then as we've progressed and the story's built up and we've discovered more of the world, it's moved up into an 80 as well, up into an 8, because that's brought the whole world to life for me.
And some of the writing, much like Perdition's Mouth, has got a dark sense of humour.
Yes.
And I really like that. I can appreciate that. There's a bit of gallows humour. So there you have it. This is our review of Darklight Memento Mori by Dark Ice Games. We'll include their website so you can go and look at whether you want to get a copy of this game. As we say, we believe this belongs in your collection for various reasons, but to me the most outstanding one is the nostalgia feel and that dungeon crawling storytelling. So thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to see more, then please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps us out, and we're trying to grow the channel. We're going to be looking at reviewing a number of games coming up, especially towards the end of October. We're going to be looking to do a Halloween special, looking at a number of horror games that are good to play over that time. But thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Bye.